of a slim, little bit of a slim crowd, but maybe we can move through pretty quickly. We do have some people scheduled to drop in at 1:30. We'll have someone, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. But I appreciate everybody coming today. One of the things we'll do is a little introductions, and maybe we'll just make this a little less formal. I do have a couple of announcements that I want to get on everyone's calendars, and very excited about it. Hold on just 1 second. We have a few people dropping on. Just one more minute. Well, welcome everybody. We'll get started. Welcome to the August Community of Practice on Peer Mentoring and Peer Mentoring Works. So we have a little bit of stuff on the agenda today, and we'll have a conversation, sort of check in and do introductions. It's good to see everyone. I know I had a couple of indications from a number of indications from people that they weren't going to be able to join this event today because of the conflict. So but I do want to make a couple announcements and get you all to save a couple dates, and then we'll give you more information. So without further ado, I'm going to pull up a little slideshow. See if I can do this correctly. So as I said, this is the Peer Mentoring Works Community of Practice, and the Peer Mentoring Works Community of Practice goal is to connect a network of peer mentoring providers for the purpose of mentoring other providers and advocacy, and to develop and expand peer mentoring programs as a VR service. We want to support peer mentoring services, advocacy and determination, identify emerging best practices, capture and share those success stories, build the library of resources, and explore the development of new tools and practice. And this community of practice consists of practitioners from across vocational rehab and other interested collaborators and partners, and mentors and coordinators, those that are practicing in the field. Today, we'll do welcome and introductions real quick, and then we sort of covered the community of practice. I want to present a couple new products that are in our field guide, and then really the main focus today would be to talk about these two events that are coming up and getting everybody to save the date and move forward with that. So for that purpose, I'm going to stop my share for a moment, and it's Derek. And just thought we'd do, I see some new faces and some faces that I'm familiar with, so I thought we would do some introductions. Of course, I'm Steve Allen with PolicyWorks, and part of my team is Damon and Cayenne. Will you say hi?
Hi, I'm Damon Wongus.
Cayenne? Cayenne's not responding.
Oh, yeah.
All right, how about Tim?
Good afternoon. I'm Tim Small, and I am with Maine Voc Rehab, and I'm a rehab consultant.
Okay, great. And Terry?
Hi, I'm Terry Hartman Squire with Ainsworth Communications and happy to team with PolicyWorks on our Lights Camera Access program and some other projects, and delighted to be here because we had a meeting cancel on us. So welcome.
And Michelle?
Hi, everybody. Hi, Steve. I'm Michelle Rubin, the founder of Autism After 21, and we are a VR provider in the state of Florida, doing peer mentoring along with other services. And we have some peer mentoring matches going right now.
Excellent. Frank? Frank, you're on mute.
Elementary mistakes. There we go. I'm Frank Kane. I'm a volunteer advocate with the Colorado Cross Disability Coalition, and I work in roofing and construction on the side. And I had a spare half hour to kill today, and I wanted to jump in and just learn a little bit more. I've been following you guys for a while. So happy to be here.
Well, welcome. And
Thank
Bridget? Bridget?
Hey everyone, I am Bridget Griffin and I am with NTAC with the team out of George Washington University. So I am happy to be here today.
Great. Good to see you, Bridget. Derek?
Hi, everyone. My name is Derek Shields. I'm with the National Disability Mentoring Coalition. I also have a consulting company, FordWorks Consulting. I work closely with Steve on a bunch of stuff, and I've been around with the COP for a little bit. And I'll be back a little bit later, hopefully, to talk about the congressional briefing.
Yes. And excellent. Is that correct? Excellent. It's a cool name.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Excellence Witter. I'm with Mississippi Department of Rehab Services, and I am the program coordinator for the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation for the Blind.
Excellent. Nice. And Joyce?
Trying to find everything. I'm Joyce Paris with Mississippi Department of Rehabilitation Services. I am program coordinator for transition and youth career services. And as a part of that, I oversee the peer mentoring program.
Great. And Stephanie?
Hi, everybody. I'm Stephanie Haynes. I'm the program specialist for transition services with VR in North Carolina, our VR general program. Dipping our toes in peer mentoring with one of our pre-ETS contractors. So I'm happy to be able to join for about 45 minutes just to kind of hear what's going on.
Okay, great. And last but not least, Christine.
Hi, everyone. I'm with Bridget at George Washington University, and I'm a technical assistance provider for the National Technical Assistance Center on Transition, the collaborative, and our focus is on VR services and pre-employment transition services.
Great. Thank you, Christine. And I know that from the North Carolina and Denver, would love to have a conversation with you guys soon. So let's get something together and we can talk some things through. But welcome.
Thank you.
And I know that Horace was supposed to join today, but they have a lot of transition going on here in Florida. So I'm going to start with a presentation. Looking at the clock, we have someone coming from the American Printing House, and I'm just trying to make sure I time our presentation here accordingly so that when he hops in, we're able to get with him. I'm going to share the presentation again. So one of the things I wanted to do today is talk a little bit about a couple new products that we have. Over the last several months, we've talked about the new mobile app field guide, which is that tool that is used to provide support and material for the direct delivery of service. And I'll be glad to, like I said, meet with North Carolina and Denver and others to talk in a little more detail about this. But one of the handbook is an on-demand web app, and it basically is sort of a handbook. It's the handbook that a mentoring program would have. And this is sort of more of an online tool that makes available a bunch of resources, including what you would typically find in a handbook, what it is that we're developing other tools and features of the field guide and Part of those features are activity guides. And that's what we're going to talk about today as a launch of a new activity guide. The features of the field guide include the sort of expandable, collapsible menu interface that you see here on the left. And it's customizable by user or program. It is a mobile app that you download from the Google Store or the Apple Store. And it has features like bookmark favorites and recently viewed. And essentially a mentor or a coordinator can have an account on the field guide and have parts of the field guide that are restricted to just their access so that you can customize the tool to support your program. And so inside the tool guide, it's not just a bunch of tips and techniques, but there are some tools in there. And those include able sheets, which are some of the worksheets that are part of the activity guides and are part of the different components of the toolkit. You have multimedia content, tools and calculators, and activity guides. And we started off about a year ago and launched the networking activity guide that Derek Shields, that's with us today, spent a number of years sourcing in the disability community around mentoring and around networking. And he developed a 4-phase model of networking with worksheets and activities. And that is part of the field guide. So a mentor and a mentee could work through that activity guide together on a Zoom platform or in person, and help a student or youth with a disability create a plan for their networking activities to learn that skill. In addition to, so here's a little more detail on that networking activity guide. The phase 1, preparing to network and building confidence, is phase 2. Phase 3 is meeting people, and phase 4 is follow up. And you can see that there's a number of subcategories. This is a 28-page activity guide, and it includes exercises around like developing your networking circles and making those connections. So it's a really great tool. Derek, would you like to add anything to my description?
I wouldn't know Steve Allen or Terry without networking. And so I wouldn't know any of you without networking, and nobody ever taught me how to network. So I wonder why we don't teach young people how to network. So that's why we created the guide. So
right.
have at it if you think it might help young people.
And for many of the peer mentoring programs that we're working in VR, some of the focus on those programs is helping young people build relationships and establish networks to achieve their transition goals. So this is a really powerful tool that sits in the very middle of the work that is being conducted in, for instance, the Florida model. There are 3 objectives: is to help young people, youth and students with disabilities, connect to networks in the community and professionally and socially. So this activity guide offers a sort of a measurable activity that can happen between the mentor and the mentee. And those resources are there so that they have a prop essentially to use whenever they need one. Sometimes mentors and mentees need to spend time getting to know each other or work through other processes. But sometimes, having something like a networking activity guide to work through will give the youth or student more confidence in some skills around how to develop networks as part of the transition. So this idea of having activity guides inside the field guide. So we have one here as an example that we've had for several months as a networking activity guide. But the idea would be is that we can build and create other activity guides along different subject lines. And so to that end, one of the mentors that I've been working with for over a decade with PolicyWorks, her name is Sierra Calcita. She is a VR counselor in California. She has a master's in VR rehab, and she has worked on, is working on 2 new activity guides. One is currently inside the field guide, and it's called the Disability Disclosure Activity Guide. And it has worksheets in it and information and sort of a structural review of disability disclosure, how to ask for accommodations. And in addition to the activity guide within the field guide, there's also corresponding training in our learning management system to help a peer mentor or peer mentor coordinator in the use of this tool. So we have training and that can be added to the training that a peer mentor or peer mentor coordinator receives. But then we also now have a corresponding tool that the mentor can use with the mentee in order to learn that particular activity. In addition to the Disability Disclosure Activity Guide, coming probably in the next week will be the new Digital Citizenship Activity Guide. This too is a product that Sierra developed working in her program in California, and she's developed an activity guide for the toolkit, for the field guide, and also a corresponding Yes LMS training platform. And here's a screenshot of both of those training modules that are part of Yes LMS that correspond to the activity guide. So we hope to continue to work with VR programs to identify needs in terms of activity guides, source those from communities that have insight into those activities, so that we basically use the community providers, the community of practice, to inform the content for those guides and for the needs of having guides and what those are. So sort of making a list and then figuring out how to build those out over time so that they become part of the library of resources that sit within the field guide and have the accompanying training. So that model is sort of conceptual model of what I just described is really the underpinning around the Peer Mentoring Works community of practice, these tools and training and information that can be used both in a training program to develop a peer mentoring program, and then also in the direct delivery of the service with these activity guides, and also for tips and techniques. When a mentor is about to meet with a mentee and they've had a past challenge with communications, the mentor is able to go into their phone app and look at those resources that are in the field guide on communication roadblocks and strategies to overcome those roadblocks. And then they're prepared to employ and test those strategies in their next conversation, so that the peer mentor is never alone when they're working with the mentee. They always have this resource tool at their fingertips to prepare for a meeting, or even to use on a platform like a Zoom platform as part of their activity with a mentee. So we really look forward to creating a number of these moving forward. These 3 serve as an example, sort of have created a template approach to the development of them, and would love to have any input on any one in terms of what type of activity guides you might think to be helpful. So for that end, I'm going to quit talking and engage you guys. And anybody have any ideas about activity guides that would be of value to your program, that would help you achieve your goals from a support system?
Steve, I have a comment on that.
Yes.
Now that we have a few mentors out in the field working, something that sort of I think would help them would be if there was kind of a sequential guide about like how to build on the individual skills, whether it's a communication, like what's the base for that, whether it's, whatever skill you're working on. It seemed like there should be a starting point and an ending point of which way you should work through the development of the skills. So I guess
Okay.
almost like giving mentors like an order of, okay, so maybe they already have mastered number 1, 2, and 3, and we're going to start at 4. But for some students, maybe they need to go to ground zero, and start from the beginning.
And my sense is, Michelle, that a lot of this information is out there already, right? So we don't have to,
Yeah.
we don't have to
We don't need to
reinvent
reinvent the
it.
wheel. It's just
We
sort of
just need to
like
package it.
ordering it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if that makes sense to everybody or not. But
No, absolutely. I mean, and that's sort of the vision behind the creation of these, is sort of to find that list and start picking the ones that have the most universal application, or the ones that we have access to um, experts who can help us develop that. I think that joining us today in a little while is American Printing House, and we're going to work with them to have them develop a tool that will talk about that community and those supports, and sort of allow them to work with a mentee from that community. Anyone else?
Steve, this is Derek. I just wanted to ask a question, a little bit of a follow on, Michelle. Do you find that like an assessment? So let's say you have an activity guide, the ones Steve just described. Would an assessment to figure out between the mentor and the mentee to figure out where the mentee is, that would then say start here in this guide? Would that be assistive, or would that be redundant to something else that exists?
Currently in Florida anyway, the peer mentoring forms that you have you fill out kind of in advance that you submit to VR are just a basic form that, demographics on the student, who you're pairing them with, a little bit of a section about goals for the mentor relationship. Some of the students, like we know from our other programs that we do, so those are a little easier, but when somebody new comes to us and we don't have like a back relationship with them, yes, potentially some type of brief assessment maybe would be helpful.
Nice. Thank you. That's great. So we could add a before and after assessment. Before allows you to figure out where to start, and then after you go through those elements, you could reassess and say, did we get the progress we were looking for?
Yeah,
Yeah, so
currently we have them work through like a get to know you activity, like on their first meeting, and answers lots of questions back and forth. So it does give kind of a baseline start, but it's not like a formal tool.
Yeah, skill or activity specific would be
Right.
helpful.
Yes.
Steve, sorry, you were going to say something?
No, that's perfect. I think that I was thinking of this the other day when I was talking to Horace. So the referral identifies that a mentee objective is to connect to the Center for Independent Living community, right? So communities have an independent living center. Getting a youth or a student to make that connection, find out about those resources, is one of the values that Florida VR has put into the peer mentoring program. So the question happens, as an example, you could have a mentee who was really ready to just go and sort of go down there and meet them and look at the website and find out more about it. But there might be a mentee that needs some work in how to do introductions, so that when they do go and meet someone, they are prepared to succeed in that effort. And so what you're talking about, in a sense, is a way of sort of evaluating up front what level of work you need to do in response to that. So I love that. That's very cool. Definitely have some more discussions about that. Thank you, Michelle. That's perfect. Any other comments or thoughts? Well, I think one of the ideas moving forward, now that we sort of have the field guide in place, so we have the mechanism to deliver it, can we work with a couple of the universities in Mississippi to design a field guide that would be available to be used in those programs, that would sort of help the student learn about the Disability Service Center and some of the programs that are already in existence. And that tool can be developed to support individual programs very specific to the location and the work that's being done. And the cool thing about the field guide, for those that are new to hearing about it, is that because each mentee has their own account, and we can take those account and create restricted areas. So areas that only that program, the participants in that program would access that material. So you can be very, very specific in terms of having those tools addressed. Hey, Richard.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. Welcome. Just a minute. We'll get with, we're just finishing up our early part and we'll be queued up for you. You're perfect on time.
Great.
Any other comment about the field guide or ideas? I welcome any thoughts that you have about questions or ideas that you might have about potential field activity guides that we can add. I think we want to sort of work from the standpoint of what are the ones that could be most universally applied, what are the most important ones if we're starting from scratch, and then maybe how do we develop some of those custom tools that can be used by a particular program that align with the objectives of each program and really do a customized piece. So it's sort of the universal component and customized activity guides. And it may be that at some point we have universal pieces with supplements to location so that you can add in those resources accordingly. So I'm going to pop back up on the slideshow real quick. And so today, one of the things I wanted to sort of let everybody know about two very wonderful things that are happening in the next couple of months to get it on your calendar. Right now, both of what we're going to talk about, the APH Connect Center National Transition Conversation on October the 5th and 6th. Also, the congressional briefing and the work being done in that work for advancing inclusive mentoring. Both of those programs and announcements are being created. And so in the next couple of weeks, we'll have the details about how to register for them. And so we'll send that out to our community to let you folks know. So just, as you hear about what we're going to talk about in the next few minutes, just sort of mark a date or put a note on your calendar. And I think that both of these are, we're very excited to be a part of them. So the first one, I've invited Richard from the American Printing House for the American Printing House and the Connect Center. And we have been working with them over the last couple of months to respond to some interest that they had on how to bring information, resources, and knowledge to their community on peer mentoring programs. And so I want to ask Richard to introduce himself and the American Printing House and the work that they do, and hopefully talk a little bit about the upcoming conference. And then we have some agenda items. So while Richard is talking, I'm going to go ahead and put them on the agenda so that y'all can sort of read and note what's going on as he introduces himself. Richard.
All right. Well, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Well, good morning. I say good morning because I'm here in Sacramento and I'm not sure where everyone else is at, but yes, thank you, Stephen. And thank you folks for allowing me a few minutes just to briefly explain who we are and what we're doing. I am Richard Reda. I am with the American Printing House for the Blind. APH, as we call it, abbreviated. The APH Connect Center is a newer part of the American Printing House for the Blind. And within the current Connect Center, we have Career Connect. And within Career Connect, we have our National Transition Conversation. This year during our annual meeting, which is going to be on October 5th and 6th, as Stephen has said, we're focusing on mentoring. Last year, we focused primarily on transition services and pre-employment transition services in general and working through the virtual environment. This year, our focus is on mentoring. And reason why we're focusing on mentoring and mentoring initiatives is because I'm actually going to turn off my JAWS here because I'm hearing all the feedback and I didn't turn off the notices. We, through Career Connect, have had a very robust presence, and in years past, when the Career Connect was run by the American Foundation for the Blind, we had a mentoring connection, a website where folks could go and find mentors and link and connect with them. Since we have taken it over, we haven't reestablished that mentoring protocol because it takes so much time and staff hours, and a lot of the information we inherited was outdated. So instead of rebuilding that from the ground up, we thought we would hold during the annual meeting in conjunction with PolicyWorks and other folks out there who are knowledgeable about best practices in mentoring, peer mentoring, and the history. We would bring together the experts in the field of mentoring from the disability community, greater disability community, from the blindness community, around the United States, to provide 2 half days of basically a seminar on mentoring. This will be a free program to attend. As Stephen said, we will have the registration page up either this Friday or early next week. It'll be a webinar very similar to this. In years past, our webinars with APH Connect Center have hosted over 250 people. A lot of those folks that we will get will be rehabilitation counselors, teachers, special educators, students, and family members. And frankly, that's who we want to reach, to get these people the tools they need to be successful, and either learning how to become a mentor, a mentee, learning about history, policy, initiatives, best practices, and also including diversity, equity, and inclusivity, making sure all voices are heard and have an opportunity to experience what a mentorship outcome can be, how positive and impactful that can be. I myself am blind, and I've had mentors and have been a mentee, so I know the value and importance of that. So we're thrilled to be partnering and bringing in the experts. Stephen, do you want to fill in, or Derek want to fill in any of the blanks, and or do folks have any questions? But basically, that's where our aim is.
Great, thank you, Richard. I thought I'd just do a quick sort of overview of the 4 sessions that we're going to have.
Perfect.
So I have the draft agenda of those 2 days of events, and you may recognize a number of these folks from our community of practice. I misspelled Brenda's name today, and if Christine promises not to tell her, I'll correct it.
I won't tell.
You won't tell. Thank you. I owe you a great deal. So you all know Christine and of course Brenda, who's joined us many times. They are really the subject matter experts on pre-employment transition services. That's the hot topic. Still 5 years after the passage of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. And so we hope to have them come in and talk about the potential for the use of peer mentoring as a support to those 5 services, starting with self-advocacy as it's outlined in the law. And so then we'll follow that with actually the pre-ETS team is supposed to be part of the history and practice section, but I'm going to do an introduction on the community of practice and those tools and the work that we did with the WINTAC in terms of working with state VR agencies to pilot peer mentoring programs. And then we've asked, and I think we'll have confirmation shortly, that Christine Murphy from PYD will join us to talk about some of their training and tools that are available through Partners in Youth with Disabilities. I misspelled disabilities too. I put this slideshow together this morning in a hurry. So Then on the second part of that Tuesday the 5th, we're going to have Horace Brown. Many of you know him from the Florida mentoring youth mentoring coordinator, and Dorothy Young from Mississippi, and she'll talk about the work that they did. If you were in one of our community of practices, you will remember Dorothy's passion about her program. And I met Brianna Murray from Virginia Priet's DBVI program, and she's going to talk about their peer mentoring program. And then on day 2, we are going to have a video specifically done from Joe Stretchy, and a little recap, followed by Melissa Lomax from the New Jersey Commission for the Blind, who has a peer mentoring, she supervises the peer mentoring program. Daniel Martinez, who you met with the community of practice a year ago, and
Metas, I believe he's with Metas.
Yeah, Metas and National Federation for the Blind of Texas.
Yes, perfect. Yep.
And then Megan Aragon, I probably should have you do some of these introductions. Richard, you tell us about Megan and Amy.
Amy is one of our programs here in California. She runs a youth program out of San Jose, and she's got a mentor and a mentee contribution, basically how it works, how it works in real time, and we're gonna let them give kind of an example of what her mentor and mentee are doing, and they're going to share a conversation with us to give people a real live example, real time of how that relationship works, and it will give the audience an opportunity to ask questions, because we really want this to be very tangible and meaningful, so the takeaway that people can see and can understand how this works at the real raw level.
Right. And each of the ones in this section will be talking about both their programs and examples and needs. I've asked Melissa Lomax and others to talk about the things that they don't have. I mean, this is what they're doing, and these are the things they need. So we hope it to be a very open conversation. And then that will be followed with sort of a wrap up and what do we need to go from here. And we are inviting a number of leaders in the community to join us in that conversation. So expected to be a very good conversation, and hopefully everybody can make it. So mark your calendars. You'll receive an email as soon as we get detail about that initiative and that event, again on October the 5th and 6th, online on Zoom.
That'll be East Coast time. That'll run from around 10 a.m. till 2 p.m. both on Tuesday and Wednesday, the 5th and 6th of October. And again, the first hour of those days will be recap and just an overview of the Connect Center and our resources. And as Stephen said, Joe's video and recap. So really good, really valuable information. We're firming up, as Stephen said, some of the panelists, but we're rocking and rolling, and we're happy to have you all involved, and we'll have registration out within the week, if not sooner.
Okay, fantastic. So along the same line,
This is
yeah,
really
go ahead.
great. I just wanted to say congratulations that this looks like a fabulous program. And if you need some help reaching out to Anil Lewis and ACB, I'm happy to help with that.
Who is speaking?
Terry Hartman Squire speaking.
Fantastic. Yeah, we might. Yeah. And if we need to, we'll make sure Stephen can get your information to us. I think Paul Schroeder is getting a hold of Anil Lewis, but we'll definitely take you up on it.
Great. And also you might want to consider Kathy Martinez, because this is about transitions. And she is the former Assistant Secretary for ODEP, the Office of Disability Employment Policy. She was working with disability marketing, Wells Fargo, but now she's the new Executive Director of Disability Rights Advocates. So she might be really good, inclusive person.
She's a brilliant lady. I know her personally, so definitely worth
good.
considering. Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
Happy to help.
Thank you. No, appreciate it. Anything else, Stephen? I really appreciate the opportunity.
No, No, I think that's good. If you've got a few minutes, hang out with us, Richard,
I
because
will. I definitely will.
Derek is going to talk about a little. I've queued you up, Derek. So I basically have the video queued up and ready to show at your instruction, and give us a little background on how this came to be. And I have the 4 categories here, but I have the detail on it, so I can show that up on the screen when you're ready. Surprise!
Excellent. Excellent. I love this surprise. So on July 23rd, Mentor National, which is, if you're not familiar with the mainstream mentoring movement, Mentor is a national organization that represents closing the mentoring gap for the 1 in 3 youth in America that grow up without a mentor. The National Disability Mentoring Coalition, which resides at Partners for Youth with Disabilities, a nonprofit mentoring organization, worked closely with Mentor on our first Advancing Inclusive Mentoring Congressional Educational Briefing. The opportunity was to work closely with the Youth Mentoring Caucus coming out of the House of Representatives, and also with the Congressional Bipartisan Disabilities Caucus. So for the first time in our country's history, the Mentoring Caucus and the Disabilities Caucus worked together. We were very pleased with this. We'd worked on this for 6 years. Sometimes progress can come slowly, but it was also the right time with the right people. So what we wanted to do was actually elevate a small portion of this 1-hour video to you who show up at the community practice to showcase what Representative Mary Gay Scanlon out of the state of Pennsylvania said about the importance of a paid peer mentoring workforce. And this is the first time that we have on record a member of Congress talking about this work and developing a national paid peer mentoring workforce as a form of disability inclusion for pipelines to employment. And if we could maybe watch that snippet, Steve, of Mary Gay Scanlon, and then we'll dive back into the 4 policy and programmatic asks that we have.
Okay.
I now have the pleasure of introducing our next speaker, Representative Mary Gay Scanlon. She is a champion, a true champion for youth mentoring on Capitol Hill and in her personal life. She is also the chair of the Congressional Youth Mentoring Caucus, which is why she is here with us today. We're so pleased. And she's representative from the great state of Pennsylvania, where I am from. And so Rep. Scanlon, thank you so much for joining us today, and I'll hand it over to you.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. And I understand we're supposed to introduce ourselves as we appear as well. And so I was going to say middle-aged, but in fact I'm 61, so I'm not sure if that counts. But I'm a white woman with medium-length blonde hair, blue eyes. I'm wearing a purple dress and sitting in my office in front of an American and a Pennsylvania flag. And I also have on glasses so I can see what's going on the computer. So thank you, Mentor, Partners for Youth with Disabilities, the National Disability Mentoring Coalition, the American Association of People with Disabilities, and all of our panelists for your support in pulling together this briefing today. I also want to thank the leaders of the Bipartisan Disabilities Caucus, Congressman Langevin and Congressman Young, for partnering with the Congressional Youth Mentoring Caucus on this important issue. You know, for almost a decade, I was an attorney at the Education Law Center in Pennsylvania, where the majority of our work was to enforce the rights of students with disabilities under federal special education laws. I was appointed and served on a statewide task force to promote best practices and implementation of the transition requirements of the IDEA, and I think that's relevant to what we're talking about today. From that work and work I've done since, I know that young people with disabilities face unique challenges, but I also know that with appropriate accommodations or interventions, they can have great success in education and throughout their transition to adult life. I also know that many youth with disabilities get swept up in our criminal justice system, and that mentoring can be a powerful tool to disrupt that school to prison pipeline. So I really want to lean into the idea that we can use the IDEA to implement mentoring interventions as a powerful tool. We can incorporate mentoring into a student's IEP, and then it becomes mandatory. We can enforce it. So this is especially good for older students as they move out of high school, consider post-secondary education, career goals, and learning how to advocate for themselves. How great is a mentor in helping young people learn how to advocate for themselves? We know from the research, mentoring is evidence-based. It's a strategy that can help young people prepare for employment, independent living, adulthood. And given its positive results, we need to ensure that young people with disabilities can use it as a tool and that mentoring programs are available and accessible. One way to do this is by investing in a national paid peer mentoring workforce that can connect students to mentors with similar life experiences and provide employment opportunities for young adults with disabilities. I know firsthand how beneficial mentoring relationships can be for the mentor as well. Peer mentoring relationships can give young people with disabilities opportunities to be a positive role model and to help them build their skill sets in leadership and problem solving. In our increasingly virtual world, we also need to expand accessible e-mentoring opportunities to students with disabilities as they work to overcome the learning loss and isolation of the past year. Mentoring programs do such great work in my district and across the country to help young people navigate their way through today's challenges, but they can't do it alone. The Department of Justice's Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, the National Mentoring Resource Center, offers support and technical assistance to improve the quality and effectiveness of mentoring programs. And of course, one of the former heads of that office works in Philadelphia. Has been a long time supporter of youth efforts. Bob Listenby, who was with the Defenders Association and then headed up the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. So we can build upon the great work that National Mentoring Resource Center can do by ensuring that its work includes technical assistance for incorporating inclusivity and accessibility into mentoring programs. Doing this will help connect more youth with disabilities to mentors who can positively impact their lives. But we're going to need additional investment to do that. OJJTP has long supported mentoring and over the years has distributed millions of dollars in grants to programs across the country via the Youth Mentoring Grant. I was happy to join my colleague, Congressman Langevin, in calling for increased funding for OJJDP's Youth Mentoring Grant for the next fiscal year. And I'm happy to report that the FY22 funding bill contains a $10 million increase in the program from last year. Proud to say that mentoring has broad bipartisan support in Capitol Hill, and we're going to try to keep that front and center before our colleagues. I hope that all of my colleagues will join me on the Youth Mentoring Caucus and work to bring additional resources to our nation's mentoring programs and young people. So thank you again, everyone, for being here, and I'm looking forward to a great conversation with our panelists. Thank you.
And before you start back up, I will put a link to that video in the chat box. It's an hour and includes presentations from a number of leaders in the community. So Derek.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. I just put a link to our newsletter article, which has a link to a lot of stuff in it. So feel free to check that out. I would encourage you, if you're interested, the other congressional comments are noteworthy, and more important to that, we had a community panel of some fantastic peer mentors and mentees, along with some other great young rising leaders in the community. The notion was, first, let's take this to Congress and get congressional staffers more interested in the work really that you all are doing. You noticed her comments about a paid peer mentoring workforce. Well, so we're educating them because there's only one singular line item in the United States entire budget that's for mentorship, and it's for delinquency and prevention, and it's over at the Department of Justice. Most of you aren't using those funds for your work. You're coming out of other work streams. And so we need to get the congressional staffers aware that this is, if we're going to be successful, we have to start looking at the global universe of funding streams and make sure our policies don't look at this as just recidivism, but it's about pipeline to independence and, you know, economic self-sufficiency as well. And these are more the models that you're doing. When she spoke about technical assistance and increasing resources, that's where we come in. We're like, you all are doing this work and there's funding models, but we need it replicated and we need it scaled at a faster rate. Otherwise, we're going to miss out on yet again one more generation of young people. So we're very pleased that we had this focus, but we're not done. On September 23rd, we're going to have more of what we're calling a community-facing event. So that was focused at Congress. We invited members of the community to come, and we had about 200 folks show up. And we were really pleased. This one, we're going to bring the disability community together with the mentoring community, and then invite Congress to come listen to that. And when I mean Congress, it's congressional staffers. So we want them to listen to what the disability and mentoring service providers think of the policy and programmatic priorities. And so Steve had a slide up a little bit ago with the four main themes that we have. And they're important to note that in the themes, these are our asks, and they come around these simple ideas of access to more mentors, access to more role models, building the paid peer mentoring workforce, and creating more accessible e-mentoring. So yeah, so the first one is the role models. So go back to the first one, there we go. So specifically with that, we do align with Mentoring to Succeed, which is school-based mentoring, similar to some of the models that you guys may be engaged with, and supporting the Foster Youth Mentoring Act. If you're not familiar with those and you want to get involved, we could help. We also want to increase technical assistance to make sure that Centers for Independent Living are getting more engaged in this model. Like we know we have 504 opportunities right there to drive peer mentoring as a core service mission and connect it to VR models, but it hasn't happened in 5+ years. So we want to support that. On the next one, access to peer mentors, really the peer mentoring workforce. I mean, that's really, look, okay, so we're at role models and now mentors.
Sorry.
You're going all over. I can't keep up with it.
All right. I've got duplicate, but
yeah. So go to the peer
putting up-
mentoring, go to the peer mentoring workforce. This is the wheelhouse of this community practice. What we want to do is to force more funding to come out to, in effect, fuel Steve. And I mean, we didn't know it was going to be Steve. 3 years ago, we had a meeting. Steve showed up and some other people were there. And we said, peer mentoring is a movement. The disability community needs somebody to create a convening for this. And that turned into this community of practice as we know it. So I'm on a mission to find some funding, and it may be a competitive model, but some federal money that would support this type of community of practice expanding and engaging, so you all would get this consistent platform that could scale. And in doing that, then you would obviously be able to getting more tools and props to your stakeholders in all of your models. And then the last one is the accessible e-mentoring solutions. This has, as you may imagine, a ton of support. You know, youth with disabilities being in isolation during the pandemic, you know, we had a fantastic opportunity 8 years ago to create an accessible e-mentoring platform. And then the Department of Justice removed e-solutions as one of their capable models. So we're pushing back and saying, no, let's make sure that's included. And we do have some members that do e-mentoring connections. So our event on the 23rd will include these 4 program areas. We'll have 4 mini panels. If you're interested in being involved, then I would recommend, you know, you can reach out to me, or certainly you know how to get a hold of Steve, and we would welcome your participation. We plan on having a community planning event with our stakeholders to define how we're going to talk about each 4, to select the speakers, and then have our online registration begin in about 10 days time. So more on that soon. Thanks, Steve.
Sure, thank you, Derek. Does anyone have any questions or comments or thoughts or okay, hearing none. I just want to open the floor up a little bit to discussion and talk about our schedule moving forward. One of the things that I'm trying to work through the detail of is how to schedule this event for a different week besides the last weekend of the month. I have a number of activities during that week, and it just makes it difficult to concentrate, focus, and be ready for this event. So we hope to move it to an earlier Wednesday in the month at the same time. And we have pinned up the next meeting to be on October the 20th at 1 o'clock on Wednesday. And we'll send out some invites to that. In place of the September event, we thought that participation by this community as much as possible in the presentation and discussion that Derek just presented. So mark that on your calendar. I think there will be great benefit. Part of our effort here is not only to help develop tools that we need in our daily operations and programming, but to advocate for peer mentoring and supports nationally so that we can continue to grow this body of practice that is emerging now with the work that you're doing in the field. So anyone have a comment or question, thought? Anyone have something that they would like to add to a future agenda in terms of a need from the community in terms of information or resources that we can look into?
This is Ellie from DSB, North Carolina, and I'm sorry, I had another meeting, so I came in late. Where will you have the recorded session so I can see the first part of the meeting? It looked like it was real interesting.
Ellie, I will, we will post this on our site, but I will make sure that you specifically get a link.
Okay.
Well, yeah, we'll email you a link.
Thank you.
I wish Horace had been here today. Last time we met, Tim, we talked about some of the challenges around getting the referrals started in the VR program. And he and I actually did a presentation to the counselors across the state of Florida. And it was really helpful, I think, in helping those counselors understand what the motivation and goals of the peer mentoring program was. And so I know that we're going to meet soon, so I'll share some more information on that as well. Yeah. Any struggles or things that you want to put on the list? Last call. Well, thanks everyone. Let me. Kyan and Damon, have y'all been checking the chat log? Is there anything outstanding?
I don't.
I think it looks okay.
Yeah, I don't believe so.
Yeah.
The presentation that Derek just it's worth going and watching that presentation. I mean, there were some incredible stories around peer mentoring and some very important effort in that regard. So we hope we can take the time to do that, follow up. All right, thanks everyone.